It's not a secret that military are some of the most underpaid people per this Yahoo article, but there's other benefits and stuff. But slowly it seems that that little paycheck that military does get dwindled down, as there are other requirements for that pay to go somewhere else. As money comes in, it goes right back out to other things. And one of those major costs and expenses that you're going to incur in the military is uniforms. So to get the elephant out of the room, yes, there is an initial allowance that is given to service members as they enter the enlistment of their boot camp. But on top of that, they will get a yearly allowance, which does increase after the first 3 years because of wear and tear on the uniforms. Now, Congress did want to do an accountability report to understand how military members are impacted by their uniform allowance versus what they're actually paying. Now, this was a little bit skewed in the guidance or direction, which was specifically to females and their impact, but there's a lot more details of this that affect everybody. This report is an almost 60-page report done by the U.S. Government and Accountability Office, which government accountability, those typically don't go together. There are some nuggets that are within this report that are actually a little bit scary to me. One of them is this. In addition to the initial set of uniform items issued by each service, DoD Instruction 1338.18 states that service members may find it convenient or advantageous to acquire and maintain more than the initial issue and consequently may incur costs greater than provided by for cash allowances. Further, any unusual wear and tear, damage, or loss of various articles may result in out-of-pocket costs. Similarly, according to military service officials, since clothing replacement allowances are based on prices set by DLA and changed at military clothing stores, a service member's selection of higher quality fabric options from other sources may increase the cost of maintaining the initial issue. They know you're going to pay more out of pocket, so the allowance is not even going to cover what you really do need. And they're saying we're giving you the bare minimum, even if there is a better quality item out there. If we're military, why would you have people that are going into service or doing their service without giving them the appropriate tools or the best that they can get? That brings up some questions. Now, from this study, it looks like $1,600 is the initial starting point to around $2,400 for a standard uniform issue from their reports. Obviously, I've heard different numbers as well, but this is their independent study on this. Now, the part of the study that I love is that it shows that military, no matter if you're a male or a female, even though the study was meant to guide towards females, it shows that no matter what, that you are not being fully compensated for the amount of pay that is coming out of your pocket in order to purchase uniforms and be ready to serve, because obviously this does require you to go out and spend money on a regular basis. We're not being adequately paid. Now, I do want to make a debate here. This only includes the aspect that you are going to get these clothes that you're buying to be paid for, but doesn't include other aspects of uniform regulation requirements. And that's what this study finds as well, is the fact that there is no true start or stop of what is official military regulation clothing and what isn't. Because when you first come into boot camp, you get underwear allowance and women get bra allowances and things like that, where in the future, that's not paid for, but we somehow turn a blind eye when it comes to facial hair and also haircuts. So yes, I will say, while yes, there are women that are, per this study, paying more money for certain uniform items, I look at the male counterpart and say, we're paying a lot of money for haircuts and razor blades as well. Per Amazon here, it is $31 per pack of blades, which is a little over $2 for a single blade. Let's say you use that once a week for your little face with peach fuzz. Then you add the $9 for your haircut, which doesn't include a tip, by the way, but we'll say you're stingy. That leaves you at $11.61 per week just to maintain your head and above. That is $603 for you to get a haircut and maintain that. So is there a male tax here? Is there something that we're not looking at appropriately? That's because we disregard the regulation there and we say, oh, we're just here for the uniforms. But to be in official military uniform regulation that is required per every military uniform instruction, you got to shave your face, you got to have a haircut. But we'll disregard that. And oops, I forgot to add shaving cream as well, but we won't even include that. Now, there are some loopholes in this study which talk about this, and one of them being tax breaks. Service members may be able to deduct from their income taxes certain costs of uniform purchases and maintenance that exceed initial or annual clothing replacement allowances. Subject to Internal Revenue Service rules, such deductions, if applicable, would effectively reduce service member out-of-pocket costs. We did not account for this in our analysis of our out-of-pocket costs. How many Lance corporals, PFCs that are out there that are thinking, let me get a tax break on my haircuts every week. Meow. And my razors. So now, if anything, I would say you should put this as an expense for you to be a military member. If you're on TurboTax, put it down, because I'm going to let you know, not many people think about this, but I've actually done this in the past before. Now, many articles, especially like the Army Times, Navy Times, Military Times, have talked about this subject before, which deem it a pink tax. Now, pink tax, what does that come to mind? That is things that are more expensive for women that are typically the same exact product for a man. But in this case, we're talking about very specific things. Men do not wear bras, where women do, and things like that, where essentially, of course, it's going to cost a little bit more for these women to have these items issued out of boot camp because everyone has to wear the exact same thing there. But once they end up out in the fleet or in wherever they're at their first duty station, they can wear whatever they want. Now, this is difficult to wrap your head around because every branch looks at required or unique military items that you're supposed to have on you. For example, the Marine Corps does include certain things like fitness socks that could be issued to you or that you should have to buy in order to be fit. Makes sense. They're probably the most fit branch out there. But looking at this too, it's like other branches don't even look at that and they're like, that's a personal expense. They only found one issue where this was actually not paid for, and that was by the Marine Corps, which has already know this and said they're going to include it in next year's allowance. What I find crazy too is, along with the haircuts and shaving that I'm talking about, is also the PT shoes. You can only wear those Go Fasters out of boot camp for so long. Now, if you're looking at the Marine Corps, for example, which is the highest fitness requirement, it does look like they will be running several miles upon miles, which an average person running 20 miles per week should go through a pair of shoes about every 4 to 6 months per some specialists that are in running. And those shoes, are going to cost at least $70 or higher. But there is no fund, or there is no ability to repay that with every uniform allowance that's out there. Lastly, this report looks at the officer uniforms. We don't forget about you guys, but they do get one allowance, and that is $400 when they first come in. They don't look at how much uniforms actually cost. They don't look at how long they're going to last for, because they don't get recurring uniform allowances, which means, is this arbitrary? Are we just throwing $400 at the officers and saying this is what it's always been, so we're just going to keep it that way? That seems kind of ironic to me that they wouldn't actually take into account and doesn't really check things like Vanguard and these other uniform item places that are going to raise their prices possibly, and not really look at this or analyze it. Obviously, I will say officers do make a good amount more than the enlisted, so I'm not crying too bad. Now, looking at the report from this, I can only tell you one thing. The response by the military is very weird, because they're like, we already do that. Thanks, dude, for the report. Yeah, we'll work on it in the future. And there's a few things that have changed. Like I said, the Marine Corps did say that they're going to change the uniform allowance for women to authorize this difference in pay for the shoes. Dear Miss Juan Sherman, this is the Department of Defense response to the draft Government Accountability Office report. Military service uniforms, DoD, could be better identify and address out-of-pocket cost inequities. Dated December 17, 2020. The department appreciates GAO's review and generally agrees with the contents of the draft report. We continue to seek ways to improve this program and welcome GAO's thoughtful recommendations. Our responses to GAO's recommendations are enclosed. GAO noted that periodically reviewing the items in the services calculation of the enlisted standard cash clothing allowance, as well as reviewing service plans of uniforms changes could be beneficial. The department agrees. However, in the interest of effective and efficient department administration, it will work to develop standards to determine when the cost differences across the services or by gender within the service and allowances or from planned uniform changes should be considered significant enough to warrant adjustment. So they said it's not big enough, saying that this is not an issue, that no one is complaining. But I will say I've heard a lot of people complain about them not having enough money for a uniform. We have statistically looked at this for males and females, and it's noted not everyone is being compensated for their uniforms. If anything, they're being encouraged to pay out of their pocket for uniforms. That is a little confusing for me. What is the purpose of this allowance if it's not to make sure that you're ready to deploy and do the job? Looking at this study, it looks like it was almost like a check in the box. Like this was just like, we need to make sure that we're looking at this, but we're not going to do anything about it, really. We could get a few extra dollars. We could really ensure our service members are getting paid appropriately when we know darn well they're not, based off the statistics here. but most military just go on throughout their day and they're like, this is another expense I'm gonna have to pay for. So my advice to you guys are keep deducting this off of your taxes. Look for used uniforms whenever you can because you're not going to get any more money. And lastly, maintain your uniforms the best you can and probably burn out one pair at a time versus wearing multiple different pairs. And that way you ensure that you're going to get your money's worth out of these. So that's where you get to the point of the video where I ask you guys, what do you guys think about how much money you're getting for uniform items? Because I know this is a consistent thing where people want to get more money for their uniform allowance, but do you feel like this is enough? And when you encounter the left and right lateral limits of what is considered part of the military uniform, when I bring up issues such as having to ensure that you have a razor to shave your face or that you have a haircut, what do you guys think about including those costs and those things that do factor in as well as those come out of your own expense? As always, if you guys like what I do here on the channel, you can help support over at patreon.com down in the description down below where you can help support, get some special perks and benefits. Also, on top of that, we also have a membership link down below this video where you can check that out and get some special perks here directly on YouTube as well. But as always, if you guys do have questions about this or anything else, you can always hit me up on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, or down in the comments below. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.
Just for the night, I'll be Country Joe, you be my Janis Joplin. I may not be perfect, but it's perfect timing.